Tuta here with another big mixed bouquet. The roses up here are called New Dorothy, and this is a special kind of milkweed that's a little bit more beautifying of the garden. The regular milkweed are just going over, and what I do, because I have enough of them, is I cut off the seed pods. And because milkweed also sends roots underground and, whoops, there's a little ant, and, generates that way. And we've got these beautiful Mystic Spirit dahlias and my Jowie Winnie and this rose and the phlox up here, yeah. And there are some great spangled fritillaries in my garden right now. They've been out there just every day. 3 or 4 at a time. So I consider that a big success. The larval food, violets, and all these flowers so that the adults can get nectar. So this is Alina. I'm going to spell it A-L-I-N-A. I looked up another Shakespearean name and got A-L-I-E-N-A. And I decided it's easier for me to just do Alina. And she is a trans widow back from the 1980s. It's quite a story. She answered my 20 questions to ask a trans widow survey. She is number 38. And she said, I think she knows 4 more people, 4 more women. And then I think we have at least a half a dozen coming in soon. And the ones who have these kind of notable stories, I'm going to just go through the whole thing like this, and then later on, after I have somewhere between 45 and 50 of us, I will go through what the data is telling us. Now again, one thing I always want to say is all of the 20 questions, especially questions about assault and sexual assault, are pretty much underreported. First of all, because of women who hesitate to tell this. It's very upsetting to bring it back up. And also because I'm gathering information in places where there's only part of the story and these specific questions were not asked. But there will be an indication of whether it was a discovery or his revelation, that type of thing. So we're just going to go ahead with Alina. Question 1 is, was his cross-dressing a revelation or your discovery? I discovered in a cupboard a dress from Dorothy Perkins, which must be a brand from back then, a pair of ladies' shoes in a large size, a letter from a bank with 2 credit cards, one in the name of, I'm going to call him Winslow, and I'm not changing his name to Winnie. But he did for his, this is odd, for his female persona, he chose Alina's mother's name. There's something pretty creepy about that. More ants. Number 2, did he select a therapist? Did that therapist or he claim the marriage is now a lesbian relationship? So this was back in the mid-1980s. That wasn't being said so much. I showed him the clothes, etc. I asked, who do these belong to? Who is, let's say he said Winnie. Who is Winnie? All he said was, it's true, I'm a transsexual. Yeah. I waited weeks for him to add more information, but he didn't. Then he left 3 months later. So, see, question 2 is, did he then tell you it's under control and it escalated? So I would call this a very fast escalation. And he didn't say it was under control. 3 is, did he select a therapist? Sorry, I got mixed up. Okay, 3 was, so he left for 15 months. This was in the clothes. Okay, so I think it was the marriage had been in 1986. Okay. No, she found the clothes in 2006. Okay. He slammed the door shut in a mock rage in July 2006, just before our son's 12th birthday. We didn't see him for 15 months. So it wasn't like he was going to a therapist and he had her come. Let's see, 4. Did he put money in a secret account or other venue and spend it on wardrobe, makeup, electrolysis, etc.? Did he incur credit card debt for his spending? We didn't share a bank account, so I have no idea how much money he spent on clothes and makeup. About 5 years previously, he had had a facelift, which he told me nothing about. So he must have spent money. They have 2 children at this time, and he has a son from a previous marriage. He just didn't return home one evening, and then he came back the next day. He looked as though he had been mugged. He went to bed. I was full of sympathy, but he said nothing until I asked more closely what had happened, and then he admitted that he had had a facelift. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and say he happens to be deceased, so I'm going to go ahead and say he's an architect. So he's a very trained, skilled person who can expect to make a pretty good salary. Okay, so this is about the facelift. I remembered that he had told me he had had his nose remodeled as a young man. I can't remember when he told me this. I was surprised, but I didn't ask enough questions at that time. I don't think he went on a spending spree. He was extremely embarrassed. There's a photo of him wearing the Dorothy Perkins dress and looking up and ingenue. But he was careful with money. There's something that comes up later about money where I would say, I think that's being really, really irresponsible in terms of your children. Okay, he never wore my clothing. I was considerably smaller than him. He was 5'11". Hardly wore any makeup, so there was nothing to borrow. Yeah, that would have been about the same with me. 6. Did he suggest, coerce you, cajole you into sex play, which I have described previously using things like what's called a strap-on? No, he didn't try any really exotic sex role play. He did want me to go on top of him, but by that time I had 2 very young children and I was determined to look after myself, so I refused. They did some side-by-side, but one time he was very rough and he took no account of my obvious discomfort. Now, see, I don't even know how to count that. It's, you know, when it's obvious that the woman is expressing that she wants him to stop, I feel like that almost crosses the border into sexual assault. So anyway, he engaged in rough sex that was not at her consent. 7, did a therapist suggest any of the above? We never saw a therapist as a couple. About 18 months after he left, I needed psychotherapy because I was having panic attacks. That is the extent of the therapy which I received. After he slammed the door on us in July 2006, he went straight to a presenting psychiatrist and asked to be referred to the gender identity clinic. I know this because I forced him later to show me the letter from the referring psychiatrist. So he jumped into this right away. I think he was already well into middle age, had fathered 3 children. Where are we? Okay. 8. Did he defame or vilify you in affidavits submitted to court or on social media? We conducted a superficially civilized divorce, although I was torn apart by anger, bewilderment, and grief because of his insane behavior. Okay, here we come to the financial irresponsibility. He transferred the house, which represented all the capital gains from our marriage, into the female name of himself and his son from his first marriage in order to force me to start divorce proceedings. Now, I don't really see how this can happen, because it seems to me that when you do that transfer, there should be an attorney saying, you know, are you married? This is joint property. Do you have a signature from your spouse? I cannot believe what these guys get away with. Okay. He could continue to transfer more assets and make himself extremely poor and then start divorce proceedings against me. Then I would lose my house, the family home. So yes, this was certainly a calculated provocation. He had planned every aspect of this transformation. She doesn't want to use the word transition. I agree. And especially the divorce. At various points in the divorce, he continued to taunt me. You know, I haven't asked for specifics about that, but it sounds like some kind of teasing. For example, he sent me parts of a new will in which he left everything to his eldest son, disinheriting our 2 children. I learned reserves of self-control which I never knew I possessed. The divorce happened between May 2010 and August 2015. So again, this was a lengthy divorce like mine. Before either of them were on social media or before she was on social media. I don't know if he was, but I doubt it. I was 55 years old by then, and he was 74 years old when the divorce started. He was utterly, utterly mad. 9. Did he claim to any therapist or a group of friends that you abused him verbally or physically? He tried to provoke me to attack him. He refused to cooperate in any domestic duties in the house, to discuss plans for the children or our lives. He tried to trip me up, to make unwise financial decisions. I resisted all of his suggestions and plowed on my own furrow. I like that, a farmy phrase. In particular, I refused to retaliate against his appalling and exasperating taunting, because I could see that he was mentally very unwell. No normal man would spend their waking hours taunting their wife. I don't even know how to categorize this. So the only retaliation which I did was to deliberately tip all his files from his filing cabinet onto the floor, so he had to spend many hours clearing up. And I broke 2 pairs of his glasses, not while they were on him. But this gave him an idea. Okay, so he did accuse her. Yes, the answer is yes. And he went to an eye hospital to complain that I had attacked him. So it maybe wasn't to a therapist, but he said that his wife attacked him to physicians. He made them check his retina and surface of the eye. That's cornea. They could find no damage. Of course not. It was completely weird that he showed me a report which exonerated me. Okay, question number 10. You can't make this up. That's why when I vet these trans widows, I just saw a butterfly. That's Great Spangled Fritillary number 56 or something. Okay, so 10. Did he attack you physically? Please indicate whether it was choking, shoving, punching, etc., if there were any bruises, scars, and evidence, also if the police were called. I only obtained the psychiatrist reports with difficulty. In October 2007, I went with the children to visit him. I told them, she made an explanation of why they were going there. We were there to obtain evidence that he was living as a woman, in quotes. I forced him to open his cupboard, but she did that verbally. And we took photos. Then I wanted the psychiatrist report, which he had mentioned. After a long standoff, he handed it over without the address at the top of the letter. So we were ready to return back to our home, and suddenly the youngest needed a glass of water. I went to the kitchen sink to get it. I saw him follow me. This is Winslow Winnie. I thought this might well be the last time I see him. I said to him, "Get your hair cut." I repeated this a couple more times. The last time I saw a pair of kitchen scissors on the draining board, and I held them up. So she held them up as if to pass them off to him, not holding the scissors towards his head as if she's going to cut his hair without permission, okay? He flew across the kitchen, grabbed my hand, forced me back against the rough wall, and forced me to drop the scissors. He scraped my leg against the wall, tearing my trousers. He cut and bruised my leg a bit. He was extremely worked up, and I was saying I'm going to call the police over and over. I said, "It's okay. You don't Oh, he was saying, I'm going to call the police. Uh, I said, you don't need to. We're just going. She took her Chinese vase lamp, which she had found in his house. He had previously said he had broken it, so he stole something from her. 3 weeks later, I got a call from the local police saying they wanted a chat about the incident. I was a complete novice about criminal law. I turned up alone at the police station and was promptly arrested by an embarrassed young policeman. Then I was driven to another police station and kept waiting for the duty solicitor for 4 hours while my 2 children were waiting for me to collect them from school. The police refused to let me go get them. They held me hostage, effectively. So in despair, incarcerated in a police cell, I crumbled. For the first and last time in my life, I agreed to plead guilty and accept the caution for common assault. When it was he who had assaulted me, causing actual bodily harm. So yes, he assaulted her. The policewoman who drove me back said she would have handled it differently. I appealed twice to the so-called Independent Police Complaints Commission. I wasted so much time trying to undo the harms which he inflicted on me and our children. But one effective learning about how the police try to trap those they have decided to prosecute and get them to incriminate themselves is that I have learned how it works, and I am more bold now. 11. Did he force unwanted sex? Well, we already went over that he forced some rough sex on her suddenly, where she was underneath him. Gradually lost any pleasure or interest. After about 8 years, he moved into the spare bedroom. Okay, so I don't know. I feel like, okay, there are so many more questions to ask. 12. Did you live below the poverty line at any time? He lived in my house until he was ready to leave it to occupy his new house. I now understand why he kept asking whether I owned my house before we got married. I was really naive. I should have been more suspicious. I managed with his measly contributions, which I forced him to make. And I think she probably just verbally coerced him to write some checks. There were times when I was very worried whether he was finally going to pay our son's school fees. He always had an excuse for late payment. 13. Did any members of the clergy? No, neither of us had any religious affiliation, so there was no influence from members of the clergy. No, actually, he didn't. Number 14, he didn't ask anything about Mother or Mother's Day. He continued to ask for Father's Day cards. 15. Okay. Were you ever required by a therapist to name him as female? And she said no. Apart from the emergency first aid psychotherapy for panic attacks, I have received no other formal therapy. I have been helped by the mother of my son's best friend. She was a medical director of a mental health services facility. Her brief words and advice to me were just what I needed to continue taking a firm line with Winslow/Winnie. I have stuck to my guns, which is just a euphemism for being firm. There are no guns involved in this story. In particular, I intercepted his emails. Now, this I think is important because this is the coercive messages that these guys engage in towards the children to alienate them from their mothers. Okay. In particular, I intercepted his emails to our children because I had the children's passwords. I printed them out and we went through them line by line, word by word. This is a lie. This is a half-truth. This is a manipulative statement. Through this textual analysis at a young age, I gradually broke their natural affection. And, well, I wouldn't call it breaking their natural affection. I would call it helping them to recognize their father's out-of-bounds behavior. and showed them that he was selfish and he was doing the bare minimum for them while whining and demanding attention from them. My son got angry with him and broke with him in his early 20s, a few years before Winslow/Winnie died. My daughter was more patient but wary. My overriding concern was to ensure that he would not impair their intellectual and emotional growth. I think some of this would be very hard to do now. So good on you, Alina. Lose a set of friends. This is interesting. I wrote to all of his friends on the Christmas cards list about 18 months after he had left, explaining in some detail what Winslow/Winnie had become. I received very supportive letters in return. None of them had any idea, and these are people who knew him from before, maybe from architecture school or whatever, including a man with whom Winnie had shared his first flat after graduating from architectural school. I have had no further word from any of them, but I didn't expect any. They were all extremely shocked and disappointed to have been deceived, as they were all socially conservative, as Winslow claimed to be. Okay, 17 is also a no. That is, did he start self-identifying as mother? No. 18, he did not suggest or insist on being called mama something. He always signed himself as dad. He was extremely self-centered, though, in the communication in his letters and emails. He showed little interest in the children's lives. He was welcome to visit, she had written to him, if he wore men's clothing, had short hair, and behaved as a father and husband. He never did. We went to visit him once in October of 2007 to collect the psychiatrist's report, and a couple of times during the divorce. That was it. So that was 18. 19, did a therapist tell you your rejection? There was no therapist saying that her rejection caused him to make these decisions. I don't stand any nonsense from children because I love them dearly, and not from an insane husband either. It was his choice, and he had to live alone with it, which he did. And then the last one was did he co-opt your experience of giving birth? And she said, no, he was too old for any of that make-believe. And as crazy as these true tales of trans widows are, I want to tell you that collecting this data is a very healing process for me. And if any of you out there are aware of a woman who is in our shoes experiencing this narcissistic abuse, please urge her to contact me through Uta Hagen, grasswidow.wordpress.com, and watch these videos here at YouTube channel Trans Widow Uta Hagen. I am the author of the book In the Curated Woods, True Tales from a Grass Widow. These men are psychiatrically ill, in the words of Dr. Stephen Levine, and they need a different kind of help. I'm suggesting that quality psychotherapy exploring childhood traumas, as well as therapy of a physical nature like Feldenkrais physical therapy, Alexander mind-body work, or chiropractic acupressure work can help to connect mind and body. Please get outside and count the butterflies.